The chamber of breaking death. The crystalline chamber stretched beyond comprehension, its walls existing in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Dex could see them all now. Every angle, every possibility, every moment where the Crucible's web connected to the physical universe. The transformation was permanent. The neural stabilizers had failed completely an hour ago, and he'd felt the last artificial barriers dissolve. There was no going back to seeing only 3 dimensions. He was the bridge now, forever. The Crucible waited at the chamber's center, suspended in its ancient web of dimensional energy. Up close, it was more terrifying and beautiful than any vision had shown. The sphere pulsed with collected consciousness. 3 million years of civilizations that had approached, seeking power and found annihilation instead. Dex could feel them inside it, their voices a chorus of warning and temptation. "I can see why they wanted it," Dex said quietly. His voice echoed across dimensions, creating harmonics that shouldn't exist in normal space. Alara stood beside him, her hand still in his. She couldn't see what he saw, the full glory and horror of the thing, but she could feel the weight of it pressing against reality. "And I can see why the precursors built it to be destroyed." Resonance of distant stars flickered weakly near the chamber entrance, barely maintaining coherence. She had given everything to get them here, and now existed as little more than a whisper of light. But she had insisted on coming into the chamber with them. "The pattern," she managed, each word costing her. "Show us the pattern." Dex closed his eyes, all of them, across all dimensions, and let his perception expand. The Crucible's structure revealed itself in layers, 17-dimensional nodes, each one anchoring the device to a different plane of existence. They formed a web of impossible geometry, each node supporting and reinforcing the others. Destroy one, and the others would compensate. Destroy several, and the web would adapt, redistributing the load. "It's designed to survive," Dex said. "Any conventional attack just makes it stronger. The precursors built it to endure." "But they also built it to be broken," Alara reminded him. "You found the vulnerability. You survived when it tried to consume you. There has to be a way." Dex opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked, seeing her across multiple dimensions. The woman she was, the woman she'd been, the woman she might become. In some dimensions, she was already dead, consumed by the Crucible's activation when the conspiracy arrived. In others, she was transformed, transcended, lost. But in this dimension, right now, she was alive and human, and holding his hand. "The vulnerability isn't a weakness," Dex said slowly, understanding crystallizing. "It's an instruction manual." He turned back to the Crucible, seeing it with fresh eyes. The 17 nodes weren't just anchors, they were a sequence. A pattern that had to be executed in precise order across all dimensions simultaneously. The precursors hadn't left a self-destruct button. They'd left a test that required someone who could perceive all 17 dimensions at once and maintain unified consciousness across them all. "It's a lock," Dex breathed. "And I'm the key." Alara's grip tightened. "What do you need to do?" "I have to disrupt all 17 nodes at the same time, not sequentially, simultaneously, while maintaining consciousness across every dimension." He looked at her, and she could see the fear in his eyes. "If I lose coherence for even a moment, the pattern breaks and the Crucible adapts. It'll learn from the attempt and close the vulnerability forever." "How long do we have?" Alara checked her chronometer. "The conspiracy ships?" 14 hours and 17 minutes, Dex said, the numbers appearing in his mind with crystalline clarity. He could see them approaching, their trajectory burning through dimensions. "But that's not the real deadline." Resonance flickered with alarm. "The Critharium." "They're losing patience," Dex confirmed. "I can feel their fleet in orbit. 23 ships, each carrying thousands of warrior drones. They said they'd give me a chance, but they're ancient and they've waited 3 million years. If I don't act soon, they'll attack. And when they do, the deaths will feed the Crucible," Alara finished. "Exactly what it wants," Dex nodded. Thousands of Critharium dying in a futile attack, their consciousness absorbed into the web. It would give the device enough power to break free of the dimensional anchors entirely. It wouldn't need the conspiracy to activate it. It would activate itself. "How long?" Alara asked again. 3 hours, maybe 4. The swarm's patience is measured in heartbeats now. Alara pulled out her comm unit. "Then we need to tell them. No, Dex caught her wrist gently. They know. That's why they're waiting. They're giving me every possible second, but they won't wait past the point of no return. They've seen this pattern before. They know the signs. Resonance pulsed weakly. Then, you must begin. Dex looked at the crucible, seeing the pattern he needed to execute. It was elegant in its complexity, brutal in its requirements. He would need to fragment his consciousness deliberately, sending pieces of himself into each of the 17 dimensions. Then, while maintaining awareness across all of them, he would need to disrupt each node in perfect synchronization. A single mistake, a moment's hesitation, and he would be consumed just like the 17 civilizations before him. There's something else, Dex said quietly. The precursors didn't just leave a test. They left a choice. Ilara's expression grew wary. What kind of choice? I can destroy the crucible, break the pattern, end the cycle, make sure no one ever uses it again. Dex's voice was steady, but his eyes held depths of conflict. Or I can take it, merge with it completely, become what the precursors intended, a bridge between physical and transcendent existence. I could use it to stop the war, save billions of lives, reshape reality itself. At what cost? Illara demanded. Everything I am, everything I was. I'd exist across all 17 dimensions permanently, consciousness distributed across the entire web. Not dead, but not alive either. Not Dex Holloway anymore, just the bridge. Illara stepped in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. You promised me. No lone hero sacrifices, no grand gestures. We face this together. Illara, no. Her voice was fierce. I didn't survive Korvathi, spend 6 years drowning in guilt, and finally learn to trust again just to watch you dissolve yourself into some ancient machine. There has to be another way. The precursors. The precursors are dead, Illara snapped. They failed. They built this thing and couldn't control it, so they ran away and left it as a test for everyone else. Well, maybe the test isn't about transcendence. Maybe it's about knowing when to say no. Resonance's light pulsed with what might have been approval. Wisdom, from the young one. Dex looked between them, then back at the crucible. He could feel its pull, the seductive promise of power and purpose. After 6 years of being invisible, of being nobody, here was a chance to be everything, to matter in a way that would echo across galaxies and millennia. But he could also feel Ilara's hand in his, warm and human and real. He could hear Resonance's labored breathing, if light could breathe. He could remember Garrett's stories about his late wife, Admiral Strand's cryptic faith in him, the matriarch's careful choice. He was here not because he sought power, but because he could see patterns others missed, because he'd spent 6 years watching and learning while everyone else looked through him. You're right, Dex said finally. The precursors failed because they wanted transcendence. They approached the crucible seeking to become more than they were. But maybe the point isn't to transcend. Maybe it's to remain human while doing the impossible. He turned to face the crucible fully, his perception expanding across all 17 dimensions. I'm going to destroy it, not by becoming it, but by staying exactly who I am while breaking its pattern. How? Illara asked. By being the bridge without losing myself in it, by fragmenting my consciousness deliberately, but maintaining the core of who I am. The precursors tried to transcend their humanity. I'm going to embrace mine. Dex released Ilara's hand and stepped toward the crucible. His perception split, consciousness fragmenting across dimensional boundaries. But this time, he was ready. This time, he understood what he was doing. He wasn't trying to become more than human. He was using his humanity as an anchor, while his awareness expanded beyond it. 17 versions of Dex stood in 17 dimensions, each one perceiving a single node of the crucible's web. But they weren't separate. They were all him, all connected by the core consciousness that remained stubbornly, defiantly human. He could feel Illara watching from the physical dimension, could sense Resonance's fading light, could hear the Cratharium fleet's patient readiness in orbit above. The Crucible recognized what he was attempting. For the first time in 3 million years, it felt something like uncertainty. You cannot, it said, its voice resonating across all dimensions. 17 have tried. 17 have failed. You will join them. They tried to control you, Dex replied, his voice unified despite his fragmented state. I'm just here to turn you off. He reached out across all 17 dimensions simultaneously, his consciousness touching each node of the web. The pattern was clear now, written in the vulnerability the precursors had deliberately left. A sequence that could only be executed by someone who could see all dimensions at once while remaining fundamentally themselves. The Crucible fought back. Dimensional pressure crushed down on Dex from 17 directions, trying to fragment him, to scatter his consciousness beyond recovery. But he held on, anchored by memories of maintenance corridors and cheap coffee, of Garrett's stories and Strand's faith, of Alara's hand in his and her fierce refusal to let him sacrifice himself. Now, Dex said, and he disrupted all 17 nodes simultaneously. The Crucible screamed, not with sound, but with dimensional harmonics that shook reality itself. 3 million years of collected consciousness cried out as the web that held them began to unravel. The sphere pulsed wildly, trying to adapt, trying to compensate, trying to survive. But the pattern was breaking. The vulnerability was widening, and Dex was still there, still human, still conscious across all 17 dimensions as he methodically dismantled the device that had destroyed civilizations. Alara watched from the physical dimension as the Crucible's light began to dim. Resonance flickered with what might have been hope. And in orbit above, the Critharium swarm held position, watching to see if 3 million years of waiting would finally end. Then the Crucible did something unexpected. It stopped fighting. "You are different," it said, and its voice held wonder. "You approach seeking destruction, not power. You fragment while remaining whole. You transcend while staying human. You are what they intended, but never achieved." "I'm just a maintenance worker who learned to see patterns," Dex replied. "No," the Crucible said. "You are the answer to a question asked 3 million years ago. The precursors wondered if consciousness could bridge dimensions without losing itself. You are their answer." The dimensional web was collapsing now, nodes failing one by one in perfect sequence. The collected consciousness of 17 civilizations began to dissipate, finally freed from their prison. They passed through Dex like water through a sieve, touching him, recognizing him, thanking him, before dissolving into whatever lay beyond. "The conspiracy ships," the Crucible said as its light faded. "They will arrive in 14 hours. They will find ruins. They will find failure. They will find proof that some patterns are meant to be broken." "Good," Dex said. The last node failed. The dimensional web collapsed, and the cosmic Crucible, device that had waited 3 million years, that had consumed 17 civilizations, that had nearly consumed a 18th, went dark. Dex's consciousness snapped back together, all 17 fragments reuniting in the physical dimension. He staggered, and Alara was there instantly, catching him. Blood ran from his nose and ears, and his eyes were bloodshot from the strain. But he was whole. He was human. He was alive. "Is it done?" Alara asked. "It's done," Dex confirmed. Resonance pulsed weakly. "The swarm will know. They will. Stand down." Dex looked at the dark sphere that had once been the Crucible. It was just a shell now, empty of power and purpose, a monument to failed ambitions and broken patterns. "We should get out of here before." The chamber shook, not from the Crucible's death, but from something else, something approaching. "The conspiracy," Alara said, checking her sensors. "They're early. They found a faster route. They'll be here in 30 minutes, not 14 hours. Dex felt his multi-dimensional perception flare. He could see them coming. 3 ships, heavily armed, carrying the conspirators who had started a war to feed a device that no longer existed. They would arrive expecting ultimate power and find only ruins. But they would also find Dex, Alara, and Resonance. And they would want answers. Or revenge. "Can the Nightingale fly?" Dex asked. "Barely," Alara said, "but not fast enough to outrun military vessels." "The swarm," Resonance began. "Won't interfere," Dex finished. "They gave me a chance to break the pattern. I broke it, but they won't start a war to save us from the consequences." Alara drew her weapon. "Then we make a stand here." Dex looked at the dead Crucible, at the chamber that had witnessed the end of 17 civilizations, at the woman beside him who refused to let him face anything alone. His multidimensional perception showed him probability lines branching into the future. Most of them ended badly, but a few, a very few, showed survival, showed escape, showed something beyond this moment. "No," Dex said. "We don't make a stand. We do what I've always done best." Alara looked at him. "What's that?" Dex smiled despite the blood on his face, despite the exhaustion threatening to pull him under, despite the approaching ships that wanted them dead. We become invisible, and we watch, and we wait for them to make a mistake. The chamber shook again. 29 minutes until the conspiracy arrived. 29 minutes to find a way to survive what came next. Dex took Alara's hand and turned toward the exit. Behind them, the dead Crucible cast no light. Ahead, the future remained unwritten, and for the first time in 3 million years, that future held genuine possibility.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.